So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me on my topic of what are e-commerce companies getting wrong when starting DEI and B programs. So my name is Nikki Evans. I'm the Chief Thought Provoker at Ridgeline Coaching. I do coaching and consulting work with teams to help make work better. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about why DEI is important and what's missing from, I think, many DEI programs, or kind of it's not missing from the program, but it's missing from attention in the program potentially, and what can we do about it? So let's talk a little bit about why do we care about diversity at work? There's huge financial returns for companies that are more diverse. So 70% more likely to capture new markets, and 35% more likely to have greater financial returns in organizations that are diverse. So who doesn't want that? So that's one way. That's one reason that we want to talk about diversity in the workplace. Another is for talent attraction and retention. So we've heard a lot about quiet quitting. We've heard a lot about the Great Resignation. If we're looking to attract and retain talent, up to 2/3 of job candidates are looking for diverse employers, or employers that consider diversity a priority. Companies that work at diverse companies are also almost 20% more likely to stay because they get to work with a diversity of people. So again, more reasons that we want diversity at work. And it's more than just the catchphrase of the month or a pleasant thing or a buzzword to have. It's also a place where we get more creativity and innovation. We are almost 2 times more innovative in organizations that are diverse, and answers in diverse groups are almost 60% more accurate. So when you get a group together to solve a problem and you get diverse answers and can aggregate those answers together, they are much more likely, more than chance, likely to be correct answers or good answers versus non-diverse groups. So there are a lot of reasons why diversity is important, and we want to have diverse work environments. So hopefully you can agree that this is a reason why people are talking about this. This is a reason why people are investing in it. This is a reason why people care about it. So what's wrong? How successful are we doing with diversity initiatives? So this has been a hot topic for several years now. In a survey with over 800 companies and 80 practices, Elevating Equity did a report that said 80% of companies are going through the motions but not holding themselves accountable for DEI and B. So DEI, diversity, inclusion and belonging. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, 75% have no goals around diversity and inclusion, and 75% don't include their leadership, don't include DEI in leadership development or learning curricula. So that means that we're not teaching people about diversity or how to do it better in most organizations. We don't actually have goals around it. And I think we know that if we don't have goals, particularly financial goals associated with an effort, they don't get done in organizations. And many companies are going through the motions. And what studies have found is that when companies go through the motions but don't actually do something, all of those benefits that I talked about from diversity actually decrease significantly. It's better to not even say that you're going to have a program than to go through the motions of a program that everybody knows isn't actually contributing. I also think that sometimes we put like one person in charge of diversity for the organization, but we don't give them a budget, we don't give them a staff, we don't give them financial objectives or budget to work with. And so that's where we see companies starting to fail with some of these numbers here. So that's super depressing. So I've just talked about how important it is to have a good DEI program and how beneficial it is to work environments. And now I'm telling you, but most of us aren't really doing that in organizations. So what does work? The top finding from the study is that actually listening and acting on employee feedback is the best predictor of excellence in a DEI program. So what you have to do is actually listen to people about their needs around diversity, inclusion, and belonging, and act on that feedback. So it's not enough to send a survey out once a year and then say, okay, well, we've checked that box, or start an ERG group if that's not what your team really wants or needs. So listening and acting on feedback is the best predictor that your program is going to do well. So, okay, how are 80% of companies still getting this wrong, though, still going through the motions if all they have to do is listen and act on feedback? So I think part of the problem, and my take on what's missing, is that we don't have a common language to talk about behavioral diversity. Because in these programs, to feel included, to have equity, to feel a sense of belonging, we have to be understood. We have to have a sense that people understand us and that people are appreciating the diversity that we bring to a team. And without a common language to do that, everybody's starting in a different place. And everybody's diverse opinions may be weighed differently. So part of the problem that we have as human beings is that we are wired to tell stories. But we're not wired for generous stories, because that's not what kept our ancestors alive. We're wired to find the story that is most likely to keep us alive. And I will say that usually those stories are not generous at all. And so when we see someone behaving differently than is our natural pattern, or is something that we would do in a situation, our first thought is usually not how brilliant they've found a different way to organize. Our first thought is usually, why are they so disorganized? Why can't they do right? And then those stories just compound on top of one another over and over and over again, because we're not looking at and talking about the difference between how you plan things and how I plan things, how detail-oriented you are, and how spontaneous and creative I am. And I think that that's part of what's missing, is a common language to talk about diversity, not of ethnicity, not of gender, not of race, but of behavior. So feeling understood, listening and helping people feel understood requires an environment that has psychological safety, that I can feel a sense of safety and belonging in. I also need to understand myself. What are my patterns? How do I think about things? It's easy to kind of know your pattern, but without some language to start to describe it, you may or may not be able to ask for what you need in an environment. So understand your own behaviors and your own strengths, and then share those strengths using a common language with others so that they understand your unique talents and your needs. So how do we do this? So building psychological safety, there are several people who have worked on this. Amy Edmondson and Per have worked on how to build psychological safety. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but there are things that you can do in your environment to start building psychological safety with your team. You want to focus on performance. You want to help your team experience progress. So where can you celebrate small wins? Some leaders get afraid about celebrating small things because they think people will stop. The problem is, with that thinking, nobody stops when you see small progress. It's the fact that they don't see any progress at all that makes them give up. If I'm not going to get celebrated until the very end, then I'm not seeing the progress, the incremental progress that I'm making on the way. And then help people spread this experience. So if we've achieved a goal, even if it's a milestone goal, even if it's a small goal, how do I spread that? Look what our team is doing. Look what we've been able to achieve. Look what your team is doing and you've been able to achieve. If you can focus on the things that you're doing well together, that helps build psychological safety, because you start to focus just on performance and not on each other. You can also train both individuals and teams to learn skills about how to work together, about how to be safe, and then practice as a team learning these skills. So there are lots of soft skill development training courses out there, encourage you to help people learn in areas where they need to learn. Maybe it's learning coaching skills to learn how to listen actively, and then practice as a team. As a team, visualize success and upcoming opportunities. have a brainstorming session about what success looks like on your team and really get everybody to drive into that vision. And then normalize vulnerability at work. Normalize when things don't go well. How should we respond to that? The idea of setting goals in an organization isn't necessarily to get every goal every time. If you're doing that, maybe you're not setting risky enough or bold enough goals. But the idea is when something's not working well, or when we're not meeting our goal, or when we're over meeting our goal, can we share with each other, what do we think was going right? What do we think was going wrong? Where do we need to pivot? If I think that we're getting off track, does it feel safe to me to say, hey, this is our goal, this is what we're all working on, but I think we're getting off track here. So can we stop and talk about that? If a leader can start going first, normalizing those small vulnerabilities, that is super helpful. So make that a part of normal occurrence. This doesn't mean dumping all of your emotional baggage on the table every day at work. But what it does mean is owning your mistakes, owning responsibility for your actions, owning your ability to change how people are thinking about something, and change how you're responding to that. It is listening in a non-judgmental way about when someone is struggling with something and trying to be constructive about either just listening and acknowledging or helping them get through the challenge. So acknowledging is just, wow, that sounds really difficult. At least I feel like you understand me, right? And if I say to you, no, it's not difficult. I'm just frustrated because this isn't, the task isn't difficult. I'm frustrated. Because I've said to you, it sounds like this is difficult. That has given you some language to be able to come back to me to say, no, not difficult, frustrating. And I need you to help me get past this frustration. So start by working with each other to create a safe environment where you can share. But one step that I love in starting this vulnerability is to work with a tool that allows you to understand each other really well in a way that's very personal, but is also in a way that is the same with everybody on the team. So we're all kind of starting from this original common language. And I'm talking about here behavioral patterns. Behavioral patterns describe how we think, how we approach work, whether we tend to be more results focused or more relationally focused. Now, this doesn't mean that relationally focused people don't get results or that results focused people don't value relationships. I like to think of it as kind of what's the mindset when you wake up in the morning? Are you thinking about what you're going to do, more results focused? Or are you thinking about who you're going to work with, more relationally focused? The environments where we're most successful. Some of us really prefer a very quiet, self-motivated environment. Some of us really appreciate team environments and that energy that we get from exchanging and collaborating with others. What are the natural talents that we bring to a team? And so I use a tool to help me measure these behaviors so that everybody can see them together, so that everybody starts to understand what are these behavioral traits and what is the pattern, so that we can start to create a common language around that pattern. So these patterns are easy to understand. Are you high take charge? Do you like to set the agenda? Are you pretty self-reliant? Do you speak pretty directly about things? Do you like to make decisions and take action? Or do you tend to be more cooperative? Are you one of those people that notices when the group isn't really following along? Do you like to build consensus among the group before you take action on something? Do you tend to be very diplomatic about the way you tell people things? Everybody falls on this spectrum someplace. And if you have a measurement assessment that can help you, you can tell how much, where do you fall on that spectrum? Close to the middle where it's really easy for you to be one or the other? Or do you fall way at the one end or way at the other end, where it's really difficult for you to all of a sudden become more take charge or all of a sudden become more cooperative? With outgoing and reserved, I think that one people really recognize. Do I tend to be more serious and quiet? Are my facial expressions maybe harder to read? Do I not give as much away because I tend to be more reserved and thoughtful? I only tend to add to the conversation when I think what I have to say is going to be additive. Or am I more communicative? Am I more outgoing or more expressive? Can you read my face very well? Do I tend to throw more ideas out even if I haven't really thought them through yet? For people that are high fast paced, those are your those are your logic focused people. They really want to get their bottom line results. They're very rational. They're very task focused. Versus people that are very high patient. People that are very high patient, very encouraging, very empathetic, very accepting of people. They will move more carefully. They will take more time. They will think about the people impact of things. You want these two individuals, somebody high fast paced and somebody high patient, to work together on their goals so that you're taking care of the people and you're getting the result that you need. So as you start to have this language and you start to see, where do we fall on this scale? How much of a flex do I need this way? Or how much of a flex do I need that way? Do I have enough people who are people? Do I have enough people who are task people, results people? Are we blending that well so that our team is diverse in all of these areas? Do we have people that have talents in all of these areas on our team? With planned and spontaneous people, high planned tend to be very accurate and detail oriented. They tend to want things to be right. They're the people, though, that under stress get caught up in analysis paralysis. They can't figure out what the perfect way to do it is, so nothing gets done because they're spinning, trying to get to perfect. My high spontaneous people, on the other hand, generalists and improvisers, they are very high level and directional. They can work around that plan. They know what kind of good enough looks like, but they often will be a little bit sporadic and they may not follow through on things as much as they need to. So they need their high planned counterpart to help out. With trusting and skeptical, some people kind of wake up, they trust people right away and you lose trust over time. And some people, high skeptical, asking more questions, you kind of start with nothing and build trust over time. High skeptical people tend to ask a lot of trust questions. They tend to want to have control of information. They tend to do better when they have all of the information, and sometimes they'll hold on to it. People high trusting tend to be free with sharing information. They may not ask as many questions. They take things at face value a little bit more. You need a blend of these people. But if you were to put, say, me and another middle-aged white woman in a room and assume that we don't have any diversity because we look the same, we are from the same culture, you might assume that you don't have much diversity in the room. But I am high take charge and high spontaneous, and she may be much more patient and planned. And in that way, we're very different from one another. And in that way, we are bringing different talents and strengths to the team. And we need to be able to learn to work well with one another. Just like if I put maybe a tall, millennial Indian man in the room with me, but he shares my pattern, although we may look diverse on the outside, we may actually have behavioral patterns that aren't all that diverse at all. And the way we approach work and the way we think and the way we organize and the way we work is very similar. And a lot of times leaders will hire people that are very similar to them on a behavioral level because they're the easiest people to work with. It doesn't require much of a behavioral flex to work with somebody that's just the same pattern as you. But the more you learn to talk about these patterns, and instead of making up the story, she wants me to fail because she won't give me the details of her plan, and instead say her gift is to work around the plan and be more instinctive and go with her gut. And my gift is to be really accurate and detailed and planned. And if we combine these things and I just interview her for the details that I need, then she can give me those things, but she's never going to spontaneously write them down for me. I'm in that spontaneous camp where that's true for me. And I have found that when I summarize for people that I know are high planned, they appreciate that, and it helps us stay on the same page and meet expectations with each other. If they still need information from me, I know that they still need information and I can help them go get that information. In addition, we also have this pioneering. Some people really high pioneering. They like to initiate new things. They're driven to get goals. They're very competitive. If they set a goal, they're going to get that goal done. Where people high content really prefer things more steady, more balanced, able to put their attention and time in different buckets and community and family and work and play. And these people may not be as excited about your new change initiative or the new thing that you want to have done right now all the time. Some leaders are very high pioneering, but those changes all the time may be really upsetting their more content team members. So thinking about that. Again, with risk taking and caution, you can see that people high cautious tend to want to make sure that they have a plan for things. They tend to think things through. They think about contingencies. They tend to be more careful about the way they take action. Where people high risk taking tend to just go take an action. And they also tend to be more tolerant in risky situations. So okay with maybe that gray area a little bit more. And then with creative and anchored, people high creative tend to be very original, tend to be enterprising, tend to do things in a new way, where people high anchored tend to be very practical and experience-based. They will start with a template and figure out who's done it before, what's the right way to do it, how can we repeat this process, where somebody high creative might just start with a blank piece of paper. Once you understand where you are on this graph and where your colleagues are, you can start to have better conversations. It's a way to start listening to each other and having vulnerable conversations, because these traits are very personal to each individual. But if you can have a common language then to talk about them with each other and see each other's strengths and talk about the behavioral diversity you have on your team, find out if you have some blind spots on your team, some places where maybe there's not enough results drive or there's not enough relationship drive on your team. Who should be the next person we hire on the team to give us more diversity in an area where we may be missing some? And then being able to come together and really talk about those differences can make a huge difference in your teams at work and can unlock some of the not so generous stories we've been telling about each other and help people see each other in a new way and see their strengths. I hope you have been able to think about things in a slightly different way. I hope this has given you some thoughts about how you might tackle working and listening to your team a little bit differently and creating a common language. I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you saw me here. And if you have questions, you can post them for me there. Or you can shoot me an email at info@ridgelinecoaching.com. I really appreciate your time today. And I hope that this helps you make your work better.